I played sports my whole life, and I was a pitcher through college. And every time I would have a game, I had my uniform on and everything. And before I left the house, I'd put on Rosalita. That was like my motivational jumpstart song before I
Yeah.
left the house. And
Back in the late September of 2015, one of my first episodes was me talking to Nick Ferrara, better known as the Philly Elvis. This is still one of my favorite interviews, and I thought with the Elvis movie getting so much press, it would be a good time to go back and talk about when Bruce sang with the King. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Set Lusting Bruce, the podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am Jesse Jackson, and I am thrilled to have a somewhat famous Bruce Bud on the show today. Bruce Bud, introduce yourself.
Jesse, hey everybody. My name is Nick Ferraro, and I guess most Bruce Buds know me as the Philly Elvis.
Yes, indeed. It was what's funny is we were sitting on the porch yesterday. It's unseasonably cool here in Dallas. It's only in the 80s, and my wife and I were enjoying Friday afternoon, and I said, "Oh, and I'm interviewing the Philly Elvis on the podcast." She goes, "Huh?" I said, on from the film, the one," and she goes, "Oh yeah, wow, that's pretty a big deal." And I go, "Yes, it is. I'm excited." We're going to get this right off the front. Nick and I we've decided that the magic and music of Bruce allows us a Philly fan and a Cowboy fan to coexist. Though, as we're recording this, the next week they play, so it will be all holds barred then. But for now, we're just talking. So, Nick, why don't you start out? Tell us a little bit about your Bruce background, and a little bit about yourself, and then how you found Bruce, and then also I want to hear how you got your love of the King.
Yeah, sure. First with Bruce, it was freshman year of high school,
Okay,
1975.
okay,
Very first day. I had 7 classes that I went to that day, and it seemed that every time I went to a different class, I kept seeing the same guy in my class.
mm-hmm,
And we would always sort of sit next to each other every class. And then we had lunch together. It was one of our classes, so we sat with each other at lunch, and we introduced ourselves. And turns out that he was a huge Springsteen fan. It's back in '75,
okay,
a freshman in high school, and his brother, who was 2 years older than us, his brother was the same age as my brother,
okay.
and they just he's the one that really introduced me to Bruce. And immediately I went out after listening to some of Bruce's music. When I went to his house, he had at that time all of his albums, which was the first 3 albums. Born to Run had just came out,
Yeah.
and I immediately went out and bought it, and I was hooked, man, from that moment on. And this person, his name is Albert. I call him Bert. Still, my best friend today. He actually married into the family. I introduced him to my cousin,
Oh, how
and
funny.
yeah, and we're actually getting together tonight. We're gonna be hanging out. So yeah, that's how I got introduced. And you know, it's been such a tremendous journey, man, with Springsteen. And looking back, of all the great times of Bert and I and other friends, back then when you went to a concert, you basically had to stay overnight, and somebody organized a sheet, and you would give him your name and number, and then you had to wait in line and stay overnight, and then the next morning when the ticket box office opened, you would get your tickets, and that's how we got tickets back in the day.
You
Uh,
know,
Springsteen.
that's amazing. So we're about the same age. I would have been a freshman in high school in 72. I graduated in 77. And I remember being at a barber shop and waiting to get my hair cut and saw either Time or Newsweek him on the cover. And I did not know anything about him, and I was a child of top 40 radio. My family were all into Johnny Cash and Merle Haggard and, all these country artists. And I didn't have an older friend or a friend that was into this. So, I didn't really discover Bruce until 1980 when a friend of my wife's, kind of introduced us. So you got ahead of the curve. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah, it was. And I immediately took to certain songs early on. I played sports my whole life, and I was a pitcher even
Okay.
through college. And every time I would have a game, I had my uniform on and everything. And before I left the house, I'd put on Rosalita.
Oh,
That,
nice.
that was like my motivational jumpstart song before I
Yeah.
left the house. And so yeah, so um, so early on, I mean, I actually Albert, but my buddy Bert and his brother,
Mm-hmm.
and a couple other people had tickets to see Springsteen in 1978, the
Okay.
Darkness tour, and I begged my mom. I wanted to go. She wouldn't let me go.
So, Nick, set the stage. This you're 16, maybe? I'm trying to do the
Uh,
math in my head.
78. I was just about turning 17. I was
Okay.
still 16 when that concert happened.
At
It
this
happened.
point, Nick is going, I was assured there'd be no math on this podcast, but yes. Okay, so you're 16, 17, height of teenageness.
Right.
Okay.
And my dad was a sergeant in the Marine Corps,
All
and
right.
being a sergeant in the Marine Corps and an Italian family, it was pretty strict in my household.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately, I didn't make it, and graduated high school with a huge, Bruce fan. And then between high school and college that summer,
Hmm.
we actually went to Front Street in Philly, and
Okay.
this was before they built up all the bars. Now this was 1979, and me, Bert, and Billy, our other
Yeah.
very close friend, we would go there and park and sit on top of the roof of our car, of Albert's car, and we'd be playing Racing in the Street because they'd be racing. This is like at midnight,
Sure.
and I, Racing in the Street. Every time I hear that song, I just
You
vision those
think back
times.
of that.
Such a great time in my life.
Yeah.
Being with close friends and experiencing that moment.
So, Nick, are you grew up in the Philly area?
Yep, born and raised in South
Okay.
Philly.
Very nice.
Yep, so hence the huge Eagles fan and
Yes.
using Flyers and so on.
Yes.
Uh,
On a quick side note, one of my best friends, Gina, actually moved to Philly. She had met a guy. Uh, we all worked for the same company, and he was a field technician. She worked in customer service, and she kind of talked to him, and he had visited Dallas, and they had gone on a couple of dates, and she'd gone to Philly and met a couple of dates. So she decided to move to Philly and stayed there, gosh, 7 or 8 years, and then moved back. And so, um, and she's proof that a mixed marriage can work. She is a diehard Cowboy fan. He is a diehard, I mean, bleacher type Eagle fan. I mean, I have seen him at games where, I mean, he's just the Cowboys were blowing them away, and then when the Eagles scored late, he started cussing the Eagles. Why are you bringing that crap now? And then just, I mean, he's just total Philly.
Right.
And so when they had their daughter for the baby shower, I bought a Dallas Cowboy and a Philadelphia Eagle baby blanket, and my mom sewed them so that when you flip it, one side's Cowboys, one side's Philly.
Ah, nice.
And it was, and the story, of course, is they kept waking up the baby because they would go in and flip, you know, the side, because I said Uncle Jesse, is not going to take sides, and so that's wonderful. That's great.
That's funny.
Yeah. So, man, I just love the idea, because I'm a fairly new fan, becoming obsessed. I love that this is, Bruce has been the music of your life.
Yeah, no doubt. I went to freshman year. I went to college, and then the River came out.
Yeah.
It was an Oh, by the way, too,
Yeah.
in high school,
Hmm.
um, my friend Bert, his brother Ralph, um, hooked us up with bootleg um, tapes. We had cassette tapes, bootlegs of Bruce Springsteen. And back then, like you never were able to get any type of live Bruce Springsteen music. And that's why today
Yeah.
I'm so appreciative of E Street Radio. Because such at your fingertips with E Street Radio and YouTube and everything at your
Yeah.
fingertips, you can pull up just about any live performance
It
of Bruce Springsteen.
it really is a magical time, and to have the Um, I love that on the brucespringsteen.net, they have all the last tour, shows you can download, and then they're doing the different shows from different eras, and it's so much fun. I drove to Atlanta over before Labor Day weekend. Dragon Con is this huge science fiction convention that I try to go to every year, and this year instead of flying, I drove, so it's like a 13 or 14-hour drive.
Oh wow.
So I listened to a podcast that I got to get these guys on. They're two friends that are in their 20s. They do Springtime for Springsteen.
Hmm.
And they basically, the premise is you're stuck in a car with two friends who are not really Bruce Springsteen fans, but Bruce Springsteen is the only CD you have. And so they talk about it and they get everything wrong. I mean, but there is so much joy. And like when they love a song, they love the song. They went through the New Year's Eve show that was downloaded and went through each song talking about it. It was a lot of fun. But
Nice.
so it's getting pretty late at night. And so I put on the Melbourne show, and that got me the last 3 hours, got my drive. I'm just pumping
Nice.
the songs and I'm just playing it loud. And,
Oh yeah.
just it is just a magical time that we get to hear all that.
Well, this was the late '70s,
Yeah.
and at the time, as I mentioned, I didn't. I had a chance to see Springsteen. I didn't because I wasn't allowed, but I was able to listen to the Passaic, New Jersey, the one in L.A., the Rock at the Roxy,
Yeah.
Cleveland, the San Francisco show. I think it was Winterland or Winter Wonderland or something like that. And I was able to really understand, um, how he was live and
Yeah.
and what that meant and everything. And I was just so excited to see him. And when the River came out, he set the tour dates, and I did finally see him for the first time, December 8th, 1980, at the Spectrum.
Nice.
And I was with the Spectrum in Philly,
Hmm.
which no longer exists. They tore it down,
Yeah.
um, and we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Hmm.
But yeah, of course I went with Bert and some friends and family. And if you recognize the date of December 8th,
Hmm.
1980, it was the night that John Lennon died.
Wow.
And believe it or not, I could envision. I still have the ticket, by the way. I'll take a
Yeah.
picture of the ticket and send it to you. I still have the
Good.
ticket, And I remember exactly where I was sitting, first level. We were sitting catty corner from where Clarence Clemens was, up in the not on the floor, but in the seats. But we were about maybe 20 rows up, catty corner.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget when he first came on stage, man. It was tremendous. And as the show was going on, believe it or not, and this is the God's honest truth, I envisioned me being on stage with him, entertaining
Yeah.
and being a part of it. And we'll talk later, but
Yeah.
many years later, it actually happened at that same place, at this
Wow.
center. So yeah, but
Uh,
but that was
did
just an amazing show. That was an amazing show.
and he did not. I assume he did not get word about John Lennon being shot or anything on the show, right? You didn't find out till afterwards.
No, uh, no, well, of course, right back then, 1980,
Yeah.
December 8th, 1980, no one had cell phones or nothing.
Right.
So nobody knew in the place.
Yeah.
My understanding
Mm-hmm.
is that some of the people backstage knew of what had happened,
Yeah.
and they did not tell Bruce until after the show.
Sure.
And, you know, folklore has it
Mm-hmm.
that, and I remember when he did this
Yeah.
during the show, he sang Point Blank,
Right.
and he was standing on the front of the stage, and it was really dark except there was one spotlight. I remember this right
Sure.
on. So everybody was sort of dark on stage, and he had the spotlight on him. If you, of course, you know the song Point Blank, and at the very, very end of the song, he says, "Bang, bang, baby, you're dead."
Wow.
And the folklore is that approximately when he sang that song is when Lennon got shot.
Ooh, it's chilling. Skilling. Oh,
Yeah.
chilling. Yeah.
So, and after the concert, we were heading to our car, and we
Mm-hmm.
noticed these girls crying,
Yeah.
and we were like, "What the heck's going on?" And we got in the car, and right away we turned it to 94 WISP, which is a radio station in Philly that would always played Springsteen, had Ed Shockey, and was always pro Springsteen. And we thought that we, turn it on right away and listen to more Springsteen music and talk about the concert. And we turned it on, and it was all Beatle music. We're like, "What the heck's going on?" And that's when we found out we were in the car.
You
So,
know, I was working overnights at a company called Acme Truck Line. I was a dispatcher, and I did not hear it on Monday Night Football or everything. It was, um, I think, late night news or something. I caught it, and I remember just the shock and the bizarreness of it. And I remember, I'll use this as a segue. I graduated high school in '77, and I remember hearing about Elvis Presley's death and the sadness I felt, losing him because, my family were big Elvis fans. I had a good friend, Mark, who was crazy about Elvis. He had all the CDs. Well, back then they were 8-track tapes, right?
right.
Listening to a lot of the modern era, and if there was an Elvis movie on, you went and saw it. You watched it on TV. I can remember going to see Elvis movies at the movie theater. Just amazing loss. So how about you? Where did you? So, if anyone who knows you love Bruce and you love Elvis. So, talk to me. You've told us how you found Bruce. Tell us how you found Elvis.
Yeah, actually, I remember, I guess like any kid in that day, right, boy or girl, there was just something special, about Elvis, his charisma
Yeah.
and everything. And I remember, my family, my mom and dad both loved music. My dad especially. We had a record player in the living room,
Hmm.
and we always played records just about every night. Mostly it was all about Italian singers. Frank Sinatra, Al Martino,
Oh, yes.
Dean Martin. But but on Sunday mornings,
Hmm.
my mom would get up very early, go to church, and then come back and start making, we call it gravy, but
Right.
sauce, spaghetti sauce.
Right.
And she would put on Elvis gospel music.
Ah, so I'm going to stop you right there. I I was in my 40s, maybe. I don't know. It was adulthood, and it was The Sopranos when they called it gravy. And I had to go back then look it up in the internet. What the heck are they talking about? And I did, um, my dad was, by the way, a sergeant in the army. And so we moved around a lot, but I was born in Louisiana. My mom was born in Louisiana, and my grandparents owned a dairy farm. So I spent a lot of time in Louisiana and a lot of Southern cooking, not Cajun cooking specifically, but um, liver and onions and fresh cornbread and biscuits and you know beans and a lot of smothered steaks and pots of green beans and field peas and all this stuff. So um and but my mom loved Elvis. Though I do remember um my dad, not as a big Elvis fan, like wanted to go find a record so he could hear someone sing Peace in the Valley except GD Elvis. So yeah, so okay, so your mom's playing Elvis gospel while she's cooking the big Sunday dinner. Oh gosh, I can smell the tomatoes
Oh yeah,
cooking, and I can just hear the J.D. Souther and the Stamps Quartet and Elvis singing. You you paint a very vivid picture, my friend.
yeah. That was a Sunday morning, and you're exactly right. I woke up to the smell of the sautéed garlic and the Elvis music,
Hmm.
and I just with that I really took a liking to Elvis. As a matter of fact, my first performance was, I think I was maybe 8 years old. A friend of mine was a girl, and she had a birthday party, and and I don't know if she asked me or if I asked her to sing,
Hmm.
but we put the record on, and in front of all the kids there, I sang "Flaming Star" by
Oh,
Elvis.
nice.
Yeah, and that started my career, Jesse.
There
Little
you
time.
go. That is awesome. So I had watched. My son is now 26, but when my wife was pregnant, I guess when she was pregnant, we watched an Elvis 56, I think, documentary, and some other Elvis things, and I would sing to her pregnant stomach, treat me like a
That
fool, and so
was nice, man. Do that again.
thank you. So I can remember this, and I shared with this before we recorded, but Chris was 10 or 11, and we went up. We were going to go to Kentucky, where my dad lives, for a family reunion, and we left Dallas, Texas, and we ended up getting to Memphis, and we said, well, hey, we're here. We've got to tour Graceland. And, he had really no interest in going. And oh my goodness, he became obsessed with Elvis.
Hmm.
He bought Elvis CDs. He wanted to marry Lisa Marie so he could go upstairs. The thing is, Graceland, Elvis never allowed anyone to go upstairs. So when
Right.
they tour Graceland, you don't go upstairs. And I tried to say, Chris, it's probably just storage now, but in his mind, it's this magical secret, kingdom that he can't go to.
Right.
If he ever became a millionaire, that's what he would want to spend his money on first. I want to tour upstairs in Graceland. So we listened to so much Elvis, and we still joke about that if I'm in the car and it's Sirius Radio, he will change it from E Street Channel to the Elvis Channel,
Yeah.
and I'm okay with that. We can live with that, and it is just there is I till we get a Bruce Christmas CD, it's gonna be
Right.
Elvis at Christmas. So
Funny.
your very first recording, your first performance. So you kind of balanced your love of Elvis and Bruce.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. So going forward, I guess, let me next by saying that if you want to do a timeline as far as dates are concerned, the same tour, the River Tour,
Mhm.
Bruce circled back and came back to Philly,
Yeah.
and he continued the River Tour.
Yeah.
And the second time I saw him was July 18th, 1981,
Okay.
at the Spectrum, and that was 2 days after Harry Chapin died.
Oh, so I was a big Harry Chapin fan too.
Yeah,
So yes.
so was I, and
Yeah.
he
So
he
I'm
talked
gonna
about that.
hang on, Nick. So
Sure.
at this point, I am worried about Brian Wilson if you go see Bruce again. Because Bruce, Brian is my other obsession. I love the Beach Boys. So I'm a little worried because there's a bad trend here of you seeing Bruce and musical icons being losing their
Yeah,
lives.
well, I truly thought that early on for
Yeah,
sure. For the first two shows, and as a matter of fact, the only tickets I've kept, and
yeah.
I mean, people ask me how many times have you seen Bruce? I don't know. I mean,
You've lost count. You're one of those fans.
put it this way,
Yeah.
I've never missed a tour since the first time I saw him,
Okay.
1980, and every tour that he went, I've seen him multiple times. So
And
I
and
have,
that is the
yeah,
beauty of living on the East Coast. I love living in Dallas, and there's a lot of advantages of this, but I am jealous of, people in Jersey, New York, Philly, that, you can see multiple times each tour. And that's just great. And
yeah,
I would if I was there.
yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
So over the years, okay, so actually then, as far as sort of, I guess, coinciding the Bruce and the Elvis,
Yeah.
if you will, in 1986, I think it was,
Okay.
I got married. I bought a home. Immediately, my wife was pregnant, and I had my son.
Yes.
And there was a local bar in Philly that was having a talent contest,
Mm-hmm.
and the winner gets $500.
All right.
So I was talking to my next door neighbor at the time. He was a drummer. I
Yeah.
said, let's. I told him about it. I said, let's. Do you know any musicians? Let's put something together and
Mm-hmm.
let's enter. So he said, well, my brother plays bass guitar, and I was like, great. I said, as a matter of fact, I know a guitar player. So I got him, and then he knew another guitar player. So it was two guitar players, a bass player, a drummer, and myself. And we got together down my basement. We were all together, and we're like, okay, what do we want to do? And I said, I'll tell you what, why don't we do an Elvis show? And that's what we did. We learned 5 songs. We entered in the contest. And this was the first time that I ever did it somewhat, not professionally, but out in a
Yeah.
crowd, really, that did it. And I rented this most obnoxious Elvis suit from a truck company.
Okay.
And, and I think I even had a mustache then.
Okay.
And then we went to the bar and we won that night, and we kept advancing. You had to keep advancing, and we made it to the finals, and we called ourselves the King and Company,
Ah, nice.
and we won the contest. And I'll never forget it. As we're packing up our equipment, somebody came up to me and said, "Man, you guys are really good. Where are you playing at next?" And I just looked at him for a second, and I'm like, well, we're not a band. We just got together for this contest. I said, "Would you actually pay to see us play?" And they were like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Okay." So I grabbed everybody. I said, "Let's learn 40 songs." And I mimicked our show the way Springsteen did. Springsteen would always do he would always do 2 sets in a night.
Right.
And that's the way I structured the show. And from 86, 87, the King and Company was born, and we played throughout the Philly area and did and that was the first like Elvis tribute show that started out. Um, and I moved to Maryland for a couple of years. Got some new band members, the King and Company 2, as I called it, and then moved to Central PA, which is where I live now. And when I moved here, I sort of decided it was just getting to be too much. I had 2 kids now, And I was literally about ready to stop when I get a phone call from a gentleman who got my name from somebody,
Mm-hmm.
and he said, "Hey, we're looking for a lead singer. It's a seven-piece band. We're looking for a lead singer." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean lead singer?" He said, "Well, we want to do an Elvis show. That's how we got your name, but we also need a lead singer to do other music." And I said, "Oh, you mean like Springsteen?" He's like,
Mm-hmm.
"Yeah." I said, "I'm in." So throughout the 90s, I was with a band called the Fabulous Heartbreak Band, and we did all types of music. We ended up playing on cruise ships. We opened up for the Coasters, the Drifters, the Platters, the Marvelettes, Bobby
Oh,
Cannavale, that whole circuit. And we did the Elvis show. And then when we did dance music, we would do Springsteen and everything. And that's what really catapulted me to to entertaining. But all along that ride, starting actually in the 80s, I kept telling people, and mostly the Heartbreak Band, I said, one day I'm going to sing with Bruce Springsteen in front of thousands of people.
yeah.
And I've been saying that for over 20 years. And of course they laughed when I said that and everything and just shrugged it off, but I believed it. And so
So, yeah, let's kind of talk about this because I already can tell I'm gonna have to have you on another time because I have so many questions about like the cruise ship and playing and everything. But let's talk about um, you know, how you got on stage. All of you should have seen it. If you haven't, it's very easy. You Google Philly Elvis Springsteen and the video will pop up. It was on the Springsteen documentary. So, talk about kind of the experience and also you've shared with me a lot of things happened because of you being in the movie, right?
well, yeah. Well, first
Okay.
off, um, as I said before, it was just the top of my bucket list.
Right.
I just wanted to perform with Springsteen. And honest to God, as I said before, I really did vision it
Mhm.
when I saw him for the very first time in 1980.
Yeah.
And a couple times now, I had since been divorced, and then I was remarried.
Okay.
And my lovely wife Dottie, who was in the movie,
Yes.
um, we were going to a few shows. One of them was Hershey, and there was another show. I can't remember where it was, but in both instances, I said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to wear my Elvis suit. I'm going to go to the concert and hope that we're close enough and he'll ask me to come up on stage. And both times, the Hershey show and I think it was the Philly show, I had the suit with me and I backed out. I'm not doing it. I said it's stupid. I'm not doing it. And Dottie was mad, you know. So the next time he was coming to the Spectrum in 2009,
Mhm.
and he's going to be one of the last shows at the Spectrum before they tore it down. He
Right.
was second to the last show, and she said, "All right, here's the deal. If you're going to bring your suit, promise me you're going to go through with it." And I said, "I promise." So we went to Florida to visit my brother, and then we flew into Philly that Monday morning. We stayed at the hotel right at the sports complex there, and we had tickets on the floor. And we had to go, as you know, for the drawing.
Right.
You have to go and you have to go early and give them your name, that type of thing, and get your wristbands. So we got our wristbands. We went back to the hotel. We were starving. So it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we're eating at the hotel, at the restaurant. And I look at her and I said, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. And she just looked at me and said, well, guess what? You promised this time. There is no way you're backing out. I'm like, oh. And at the same time, actually, the Phillies were playing the Dodgers that night. This is October 19th,
Yeah.
2009. They were in the playoffs. And we initially had tickets for that, but we didn't go because then we found out about the Springsteen, we got tickets
Yeah.
for the Springsteen tour. But my son was at the game. Okay.
Yes.
So I'm like, okay. I'm feeling really stupid, but okay. So I put the suit on. We leave the hotel. We're walking to Spectrum because we had to be there by like 4:30 or quarter five for them to pick the drawing. And as I'm walking there, people were like, "Hey, Elvis, man, cool," like
Yeah,
everybody pretty into it, and it made me feel at ease.
sure.
So we get there, and we had a sign, and this was the idea of my wife, Dottie. She said, "Let's put a sign together that says, 'Can the king sing with the boss?'"
Nice.
So we had the sign. We're in line.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you there for a minute because
Okay.
all I'm thinking of is I'm glad you stepped up because oh, what names your fellow Eagle fans would call you if you chickened out. And I'm thinking, of a type of house cat maybe.
Yeah.
Yes, that we're going to keep
Exactly.
this podcast clean, but so I'm so glad that your lovely bride said step up, in for a penny, in for a pound, go for it.
Exactly.
So,
Yep. Exactly. I would have backed out again
oh,
if it.
and you know what? I would have been right there with you. I can
Yeah.
understand, like, okay, you know, sometimes, it isn't like when I go to a Doctor Who convention, I put on my Doctor Who hockey jersey, I'm with the group. I mean, not a lot of people dress up for a Springsteen concert. Someone asked, has anyone ever dressed up in a chicken costume? Play Atlantic City, I'm the chicken man, and I'm like, it's just not. So, all right. So you're being embraced by your fellow Bruce fans. They think it's cool. They're going, way to go, King.
Yeah. 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 Everything.
Elvis. So, yeah,
People wanted pictures with me.
yeah,
We had the sign up. Can the king sing with the boss? We're in line now, waiting for the drawing.
right.
So they're ready for the drawing, and people are saying, "Let Elvis pick the drawing."
Oh,
And I was like, "No freaking way, no
yeah, because
way."
if I get early, they're going to think that I learned how to palm. And,
Yeah, right, exactly. I didn't want any part of it.
yeah.
You know. So so someone else did the drawing, and as it turns out, like all the stars had to be in line for
Hmm.
this
Yeah.
this magical moment. So somebody else picked the number, and sure enough, Dottie and I, we were like number 98 and 99th person to walk into the Spectrum.
Okay. Yeah.
So we walk in, and we are on the left side of how there's the stage, and then he has like a walkout,
Right.
like a walkout stage. We were on the corner of that. Our hands were touching that. Okay,
Okay.
that's how close we were. So we're there, and we're waiting and waiting, and people were just loving it, man. We're all right, man. Like, man, I hope you do it. Like, they were really like, I hope you do it. I hope you do it. And one guy's like, all right, man, I know you're gonna get on stage. Don't embarrass us. He was. I was like, all right.
And I think this is amazing. And if I'm not true, I don't want to know. Don't call me out, listeners. But I, it seems to be the people in the pit and even the people in the audience, there isn't a jealousy of, oh my goodness, this person got to be on stage and I didn't. There is a joy that this person did this. Like the video of the, you know, Mother's Day where she got on stage and they did say the last dance for me, which I just love that video.
Right.
There's no jealousy that she got up there and danced. I mean, a little jealousy, but not a negative, not a, oh, I can't believe this happened and why didn't it happen to me? It is more, how cool is that?
No,
So,
you're hitting it
yeah,
right on the head, and it goes even beyond just that moment,
yeah,
even up to today. Um, just the acceptance
yeah,
and the excitement, and just
yeah,
where this has gone
right.
since then has been tremendous.
So all the people in the pit around you are like, if, if there is a if there is a way to make their mental, this happen by mentally wishing it, you have everyone around you, mentally supporting you, physically supporting you, and so much, positive energy, even though you did get a little, hey, don't F it up.
Right,
But
exactly.
that just seems so appropriate for, the Philadelphia area, right? That's
Exactly.
tough love. So,
But yeah, so So we were there, and that was the night that was at the time when he was doing full albums, start to finish. And that night he did the full Born to Run album.
Okay.
And I think it was right after the Born to Run album, they started playing. I think he did a little bit of Raise Your Hands, and
Yeah.
then stopped, and then they kept playing instrumentally, and then here came the signs, and
Yeah.
Bruce started pulling all the signs. So Dottie had the sign, "Can the King Sing with the Boss?" and he grabbed it,
Hmm.
and then he was walking in grabbing other signs.
Right.
Then he came back and he gave Dottie back the sign, and he said, "I'll get back to you."
Oh,
And we
nice.
and
Nice.
we looked at each other like, what does that mean?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so there was a gentleman that was standing behind next to me. He actually had a sign that said, Can you play marry little girl, I want to marry you?"
Yeah.
Because he was getting engaged to his girlfriend.
Ooh.
And Bruce took that sign and he did play "I Want to Marry You,"
Yeah.
and he proposed right next to us, and that was
Oh,
really cool,
that is cool.
So right after that, and this is where you can actually see it on YouTube, because here's where it begins, where Bruce is standing there and he says, "All right," he goes, "We're gonna try it. We're graced by the king himself," and he said, "This is a great song by Otis Blackwell," and then he starts doing "All Shook Up."
Yes.
So now he's doing it, and the crowd's into it. The camera guy is right in my mug.
Yeah.
So the big screens at the Spectrum, I'm on the big screen.
Oh,
So
awesome.
now everybody can get a very good close look at me,
Right.
and you can feel the buzz in the crowd. Like, you can just feel the energy, and everybody's having a great time during Bruce while
Yeah.
he's singing. I'm dancing and singing in front of the camera, so I'm like mouthing it as everybody sees
Yeah.
me. At the time, I remember thinking to myself, you know what? He's not going to call me up, but that's okay, because it already has been one of the greatest nights of my life. Because prior to that moment,
Yeah.
during the show, all the band members were joking with me, Clarence
Yeah.
and Steve Van Zandt, and who kept pointing at me across the stage, because we were like in front of near
Yeah.
Clarence, and Niels Lofgren. Oh my God, Niels was joking with me all night. It was just already a great night, and
Yes.
I was accepting the fact that he wasn't going to call me up, but it was fantastic.
Yeah, you're going, okay, don't be greedy.
Right.
He told your lovely bride, I'll be back to you. You've had the band joking with you. You've gotten all your all your fellow Bruce buds around there feeling supporting you. You've been on the big screen dancing. He's done an Elvis cover. Even gave roots, gave credit to the original artist. And so this is, yeah, at this point you're going, okay, life's pretty good.
Right, exactly. And I've never been that close to a Springsteen concert.
Yeah.
I'm right there. So everything was just so, phenomenal. So all of a sudden, I'm hearing like, "Okay, King, come on up." I was like, "What?" And I looked, and then all I felt was people like picking me up, because the stage was really high.
Yes, I could tell that.
And they were picking me up, and this is the one. I don't remember too many things during that whole episode on stage. I really
Sure.
don't. It's so surreal. But the one thing I do remember, and when I see it on video, I just like look at it and shake my head a little bit, because I remember as I was trying to get up on stage, I see this hand in front of my face, and I look up, and it's Bruce putting his hand out to help me get on stage. And I remember saying to myself, "Don't touch his hand. I can do it myself."
Yeah.
I don't know why. I think it was out of respect.
Yes.
Like, I didn't want to touch him. You know
Right.
what I mean? It
Sure.
was that type of thing. So this is crazy. I don't know what's going to happen. So I stand up on stage. I'm like literally right in front of
Yeah.
him, and he hands me the mic, and the band's playing, and I'm like, okay, this is it.
Yes.
So I start singing "All Shook Up,"
Yes.
and I turn around, and not knowing, not seeing anybody on stage,
Yeah.
so I'm focused now on the crowd.
Right.
But it was after the fact that I saw the video that then things really started coming together, all the pieces of the puzzle,
Yeah.
because once I saw the video. But I grabbed the mic, and now I'm singing, and just it was just an amazing moment. The crowd's going crazy. I'm
Right.
seeing this. I'm here. I'm at the Spectrum where I first saw him many years ago, and here I am standing at the same place with Bruce.
Yes.
It was just an amazing moment. And as I'm singing, I remember as I kept going that the excitement, whatever, but I think I was standing in front of Clarence then, and all I heard was like Max's drum
Yeah.
and something else in my ear because I guess all the band members had earpieces
Right.
for their monitors.
Yeah.
So I felt myself starting to sing off key
Yeah.
because I couldn't. It was
Sure.
just everything going on, and I couldn't pick it up.
I will tell you, um, I have not sung professionally. I've only sung, in choir and, different things. But um, I've I have a lot of friends who are, and it said, you can't hear yourself, and so the monitors really do help you kind of keep going. And so, there's all that noise, and you're just with no monitor or anything. I can imagine.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I performed for years. You need monitors,
Yeah, absolutely.
so I remember saying to myself, "Uh oh, I gotta do something here because I need to pick this up." Oh, by the way, too, when you see in the video, when I dropped to my knee,
Yeah,
I pulled my hamstring and I kicked out my leg. But when I kicked out my leg, it looked like it was an Elvis move,
yeah,
but it was really because I felt my hamstring pulling.
right.
So I stand up and then I'm saying to myself, I gotta do something here. So I looked at Bruce and that's why I went, hit it, Bruce. And then he started doing the guitar solo.
Yeah,
And then at this point I'm saying, okay, now where do we go?
right.
There is no guitar solo and All Shook Up.
Yes.
So I said, I'll change the song. So I look at Max, and Max, like he's drumming, he's got a smile on his face. And then when he looked at me, and this is all musicians know, they're following the singer, they
Yeah,
pick up cues. And Max knew right away that I was about to do something.
right,
So I backed up a little bit near Max and I raised my arm. And then right at the end of his solo, I just went into Blue Suede Shoes. And
right.
the band didn't miss a beat. They were right with me.
It is amazing. And I'm going to tell you right now, I am a gushing fanboy of the E Street Band. When you see the signs they pick up, and the example I give all the time is, Jolie Blanc. They had not planned it, they had not toured it. They was there in Melbourne, they Susie does a violin solo and the accordion. I mean, just this. You're like, how can they do that? So here's a perfect example, right? You're doing Blue Suede Shoes, and they switch immediately, and you're rolling.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
awesome.
And then I remember the one other thing that I do remember
Yeah,
clearly is as I'm singing it in the corner of my eye, I see
yeah,
Bruce coming to me. And I remember saying to myself, as I'm singing,
yeah.
looking at the crowd, saying, "Uh oh, Nick, I think you're done."
Yes.
and and Bruce comes up and I say, "Take it home, Bruce." I give him the mic, and
Yeah.
he says, "Elvis has left the building."
Yes.
So I give my bows. I
Yeah.
bow to the crowd. I bow to the E Street Band. And when I jumped off stage, this was the point you made earlier. People just mobbed me,
Yes.
and I couldn't find Dottie.
Yeah.
And it was like the Rocky movie when Rocky's like looking
Yeah.
for Adrian. I'm
Yeah.
like looking,
Dottie.
yeah, I'm looking.
Dottie.
And then I finally get to her, and we hug, and it's just like, oh
Yeah.
my God, the dream came true.
Yes.
And then I look up, and then he's at the point where he says, "The Philly Elvis, the Philly Elvis." And then he says, "I have no idea where the FE came from."
Yes. I love that.
And I think he says that to show everybody that this was not planned,
Yes, I think so too.
you know? So, okay, so real quick, and so we're there the rest of the show, and it was just amazing. And the
Yeah.
show's over, and it took forever for us to get out of there because so many people wanted pictures. People
Oh, I
from
imagine you. I'm. I have said this many times, and I will say it many times. With all respects to Disney, the happiest place on earth is a Bruce Springsteen concert.
No doubt.
And so you're already feeling higher than a kite. And then you've performed, so you know that adrenaline rush you have after a show. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
I do that when I do a panel at a comic convention. You know, there's this rush after you, and so you've got a double rush. You've seen Bruce, which is great in itself. Not only has he acknowledged you, but you've been on the stage and actually got to sing a couple of Elvis songs, and he calls you out the Philly Elvis. So, at this point, you're going, pretty good little night,
Yeah.
right?
Well, well, listen to this then.
Yeah.
And then it just gets, then it completes. Oh,
Okay.
by the way, too, as I get on stage, my son, who I told you was at the Phillies game,
Yeah.
was texting my wife Dottie and
Mhm.
says, "Did my dad get on stage yet? Ha ha."
Yeah. Ah!
And she goes, "He's up there right now." And he's texting back, "No way."
Yeah.
She's
No effing way, right?
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly. Well, he's at the game. He stands up at the game and from the top of his lung yells, "My dad's on stage with Bruce Springsteen. My dad's on stage with Bruce Springsteen." He just couldn't believe it. So we're like huge Philly fans, right? So we finally get out of the Spectrum. We're running to our hotel so we can catch the end of the game, the
yeah.
Phillies game. So we get to the hotel. We're like on the top floor. We get to our room. We open up the shades, the drapes, and right out of our window is the view of Citizens Bank Park, the open end, so we can actually see inside the park and hear the crowd from our stadium. It's the ninth inning. J roll is up. We put the game on TV. We can actually hear the crowd through the window.
Mm-hmm.
You got the game on. J roll hits the game winning hit in the bottom of the ninth.
Nice.
Phillies win. They're doing fireworks out of our window. It was just like we looked at each other like this was just an unbelievable, amazing night. So the next morning, my phone rings. It was like 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm like sore, tired, no voice, and it was my buddy. And he wakes me up the next morning, and I answer the phone, and the first thing he says is, all he says is, "What the hell did you do last night?" I'm like, "Who is this, Bill?" He's like, "Yeah." He goes, "They're talking about you on the radio, and you're on YouTube." And I was like, "What's going on?" And here, 94 WYSP, people were calling in saying that I was a plant, that that Bruce that Bruce, it was cool that Bruce had Elvis, like they planned it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I called the radio station and I said, "Listen, I'm hearing what's going on." I said, I introduced myself and I said, "I could tell you it wasn't a plant."
Yeah.
So they had me on, and I talked for like an hour there about all what had happened, and that just started it. And from that point, has just been amazing. The movie came out. Springsteen and I, we got
Yeah.
filmed in South Philly. We were eating our favorite cheesesteaks,
Yes.
Luke's cheesesteaks, um, and they had the premiere in New York. We took a limo to see the premiere. We were invited to the premiere. We met the director and the producer. Um, actually, um, and I guess I'm trying to hurry because I know we don't have much time. But
That's okay.
there's just so much that has happened because we got filmed in South Philly, and then we handed in our segment.
So I want to ask you about that, and yeah, we can go a little bit long, and then we'll kind of do some other stuff unless you need to get going.
No, I'm good.
Um,
I'm good.
so so you had a friend or someone record the conversation on the bench while you guys are eating your cheesesteaks, and uh, it's very clear that she's in love with you and she's so proud of you. I think it's a great segment, and I love the whole film anyway. But um, so were you like any other fan, just submitting your stuff and hoping you'd make it, or had they reached out to you saying, "Hey, this is a great story. We think we want to have this."
The first time I ever heard about the movie was my son.
Yeah.
He emailed me and said, "Dad," he said, "take a look at this. I think this is, it's perfect."
Yeah.
And then I saw what they were doing,
Mhm.
what the movie was going to be all about. So I met this guy who just for the Springsteen and I movie. We went in South Philly,
Uh huh.
and yeah, and videotaped us, and he put it together, and then when we send it in, they immediately responded, the producer, and said, "Man, this is exactly what we're looking for."
Awesome.
And that's how it started. And they kept emailing me, asking me questions, um, and then we didn't know. I didn't hear anything, and we just didn't know because we knew that they already scheduled the date as to when they were going to air the movie,
Right.
and it was coming to that date. I think it was May. I think it was, or the
Mhm.
first week of June that I found out, and I found out because I went for a jog on a Monday. It was a Monday. It was the first Monday in, was it May or June?
I think it was May.
It was May,
Okay.
first Monday in May of that year, and I haven't heard anything yet from them. And I ended up going for a jog, and long story short, I basically had a mini stroke, and
Oh, okay.
I went to the hospital, and I was there overnight. And it wasn't until the next day with my iPad as I was checking out, and it was a scary 2 days,
Oh,
and
sure, I can imagine.
I wasn't, my head wasn't, a lot of thoughts then come into your head, and right before I was checking out, I see this email that I made the movie,
Oh, cool.
and they said you not only made the movie, but we put you in the coming attractions that they released, and they said we're sorry that we waited so late, but here's what happened, and I don't know how much I could share with you. I'm going to be real careful about
Okay,
it,
sure.
but I almost didn't get in the movie because there was a um, there was a I don't want to say this. Um, there was an enterprise. There was a company, an organization.
Elvis Enterprise.
Yeah, I guess I could say it. Elvis Presley Enterprises
Mhm.
that said you cannot put him in the movie because one of his resemblance of what I wore,
Yeah.
and two of the songs I sang, unless we're compensated. And
What a
I know, and I and I
jerk.
and, I, and that's why I
Yeah.
so um so they went around and around and around and around, and um they then, because of what was being asked and everything of what they were asking for, finally people said, "Look, we're just not going to have him in the movie, and they've got to have him in there." And then they all agreed and they came to terms, and that's why they once they released the coming attractions, like the movie was right after, they actually delayed them. They delayed everything because they were fighting about that. Um, so I really really appreciated that. It was somewhat shared in the email, and then when I was there at the premiere was when I had some conversations. But I was so happy. It just turned out great. It was a great premiere. I met people within the movie, like Lisa Purcell, just a wonderful person, and other people within the movie. Teresa Martin and her son. They were at the premiere as well.
Mhm.
And then after the movie, they had a panel. Jim Rotolo was there from E Street
Yeah.
Radio, and they had a panel, and actually Rolling Stone magazine was actually videoing it. They were streaming it, and the director was there from England, and they asked me to be part of the panel. There was like six of us.
Nice.
Yeah, I was asking the questions. This was after the movie shown,
Mhm.
and they had a Q&A with the crowd, and the very first question directed towards the panel was towards me.
Mhm.
And the question was, we see that you were eating a cheesesteak in the movie. What was your favorite cheesesteak?
Ah, nice. Got a
And then
little
I told him Tony
yeah.
Luke's, and so anyway, just because of all that, I just can't begin to say I've met just wonderful, wonderful people within East Street Nation, like yourself. I mean,
Yeah,
here we are. Um, had the privilege of entertaining in Jersey with some terrific, terrific musicians.
yeah.
Vinny Mad Dog Lopez, met him a few times.
Oh,
Really nice
nice.
guy. Just recently performed at the 40th anniversary of the Born to
Hmm.
Run,
Yeah.
and it was actually also to raise money and awareness for heroin addiction, which is running rampant.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And that was in Hershey I guess it was last month.
Yeah.
And Max Weinberg opened up the night with the band and did some songs, and had the opportunity to meet with Max backstage after he was done, because I was going on stage like pretty much next
Hmm.
uh, with the band, and had a real nice conversation with Max. And it was funny because um, all these years, it's been 6 years now, believe it or not, and
Hmm.
I said to Max, I said, well, first off, I said, Max, remember me? And he looks at me, he goes, yeah, man. He goes, you were on stage with us at the Spectrum in Philly, and we were laughing and we were talking. And I said, look, I have to ask you. I said, this has truly been on my mind. I said, I really don't know. I never really heard feedback from anybody within the band, and especially Bruce.
Yeah.
Did you guys, did you think it was okay? Or did Bruce be like, man, what a,
Yeah.
can't believe the guy came, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't know what they were thinking.
Yeah.
He's like, oh my God, he thought it was great. He said, we loved it. I mean, it was just some really great feedback. And that was pretty awesome.
You know, you talking about the people thinking it's a plant, um, a few years ago, Kristen Chenoweth had a voice teacher, Sarah Horn, on stage, and they did For Good, and it was amazing. And everyone said, "Oh, it's a plant because she's too good, and and it's too perfect." And Sarah Horn did a blog says this is absolutely not a plant. I just, this kind of lightning in a bottle, and it's the same thing, and I think what was perfect is you didn't overstay your welcome, if I can put it that way. It's there's a video of two brothers at the Houston show doing No Surrender. And
Yes,
and
that was
and
awesome.
and yeah, I mean there's just joy in there. And I do think that, the same thing. They didn't overstay their welcome. They went there, and then, when it was time to get off, they did. And I think like when you said, you got the feeling, okay, I've had my moment in the sun. I have, I made a very, very big wish. It's come true. I'm going to get while the getting's good, because, I don't want to make this unpleasant for anyone. And that's wonderful. All the good things that have happened, and that they remember you and they think of you, with such affection.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's just been, as I said, I can't even, say enough
Yeah.
of all the people I've met, and because of the movie, of just,
Yeah.
the relationships I have built, I guess,
Hmm.
from around the world,
Yeah.
you know, um, from many, many countries, and because of that,
Hmm.
I'm actually was asked to perform, and I'm going to the last weekend of January. Dottie and I were headed off to England,
Oh,
and
how awesome.
yep, they're actually doing a huge weekend at the Hind Hotel
Hmm.
in Wellingborough, England. They're doing a Bruce Springsteen weekend, and it's going to be a
Nice.
celebration of Springsteen music. They did get the okay where all proceeds is actually going to the Light of Day Foundation,
Oh, wow.
and there's going to be some Springsteen tribute bands playing
Hmm.
both Friday night and Saturday night. And Saturday night, I'm going to open up for one of the Springsteen tribute bands. I'm going to be doing a show.
When is that happening?
That's the last weekend of January.
Okay.
I forget the exact dates.
All right.
Jan-
So here's the plan. Let's have you um, later this year, maybe November or December, before you're going. We'll have you on again. We'll talk some more music and some more Elvis stories and Bruce stories, because we didn't get to talk about him doing Bernie Love in Nashville, and the influence, how much Bruce loves Elvis and how he recognizes him. So I want to talk about that more, and then after the gig, I want to have you on and talk about the experience. So does that work?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
absolutely, man. I
That's
appreciate it.
yeah, I no, I just you've been a great guest and I think I've just scratched the surface of the stories we could tell. And I it's just the whole purpose of this podcast is really just to do this. It's an excuse for me to get to talk to Bruce fans and kind of have them share the stories and hopefully people listening enjoy it as well.
Well,
So,
this, yeah, Jesse, I really appreciate it,
yeah.
and again, man, I mean, this has just been so much fun,
Oh,
and
good.
some just met again some of the nicest people that I'm proud to call my friends.
Yes.
And it's just a great it's just a great situation, and I'm looking forward to going to England and
Yeah.
meeting people who I've talked to through social media these last few years. I've now
Yeah.
actually get a chance to meet them
Mhm.
in England, and
Oh, that's awesome.
looking forward to. So, but thanks, Jesse, man. I
All right,
appreciate
so hang on just a minute. Let's say, and if you want to be on the podcast and talk about Bruce and all that implies, please send an email to setlustingbruce@gmail.com. Nick, if they want to reach you, how can they find you?
Oh, thank you for that. Actually, I'm on Twitter at Philly Elvis. And you can go to www.thephillyelvis.com, and that will actually take you to my fan page on Facebook, which is Facebook / the Philly Elvis.
Awesome.
So, and just tons of information are there. I have plenty of videos on YouTube, and so, but yeah, and I'm more than happy to to talk to anyone, and so reach out to me, man. I appreciate it.
All
Come
right.
see a show.
Absolutely. So we're going to finish up with how many men fail, their dreams denied. They walk through the streets with death in their eyes. Now the man on the radio says Elvis Presley's died. Come on, let's go tonight.
Nice. I
Th-
like it.
Thank you guys. We'll talk to you soon. Bye. Doing a podcast at times can be a one-way conversation, and I hate that. So please let me know what you like and don't like about the work I'm doing. You can reach the podcast via email at setlustingbruce@gmail.com. The show is on Twitter at setlustingbruce, and my personal Twitter is at jessejacksondfw. We have a website, www.setlustingbruce.com. From there, you can find links to other Springsteen podcasts as well as other music-themed podcasts. We have a page devoted to our own SLB All-Star Band. These are guests who have been on the podcast more than 3 times. There is a link to our store where you can purchase Set Listing Bruce shirts as well as a Mary Question t-shirt. There is a link to our Patreon page where you can sign up to help support the podcast financially. We have different levels and different rewards based on your support. If you don't have any extra cash, and right now who does, you can support the podcast by subscribing via your favorite podcast player and leaving us a review. The more reviews we have, the easier it is for people to find us. And please tell a friend about the podcast, especially if they love Bruce or music, because it will make a difference. You just heard the fun talking, hard rocking, music loving, album ranking, fan thinking, joy spreading, lyric reading, story sharing podcast that is the one, the only Set Listing Bruce. The theme for Set Listing Bruce was written by David Rosen, used by permission.